classroom, we're going to talk about bats, because bats are awesome, and being a cave, we are home to many bat species. So we're going to have a little chat about those today.
So Capricorn Caves, it's a very important place up here in Queensland. And what are the Capricorn Caves?
So Capricorn Caves are a limestone cave system in central Queensland, Rockhampton. So it's amazing geological structure, and we do cave tours and school groups and educational groups, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
And obviously caves are important for bats. Bats love living in caves, so it's good to talk about bats for the very first episode. So starting off, Kath is our bat expert. She even looks a bit like a bat. I'm joking, but she's got her bat earrings
Got my bat earrings.
She loves bats. She eats bats for dinner. She doesn't eat bats for dinner. So, I've got a couple of questions for Kath, like, what is a bat? Is it actually a flying rat, or is it a bit more complicated than that?
Bats are mammals, just like rats, but no, they're not a rat. Bats have this amazingly evolved to be the only mammal that can sustain flight. And we have two different types of bats on our planet. We have macro bats and micro bats. So just to show you the difference, we have our macro bat, which are generally a bit bigger, macro meaning large, so they're more eating fruit and nectar, flowers, pollens, and our micro bats, like this little guy here. So micro meaning small, and they're generally insectivorous, so things like beetles, mosquitoes, but we also have a carnivorous microbats in the world, and we're lucky enough to have one in Capricorn Caves called the ghost bat. And being a carnivore, he is a meat eater. So they eat things like lizards, beetles, spiders, frogs, and other mammals, such as the other little bats in the caves.
So when you're talking macro and micro, how big is macro? How big can a bat get?
Some of the biggest flying foxes in the world can get quite large, but then you can also get macro bats that are little blossom bats that can be quite tiny. I believe Thailand has a bumblebee macro bat that's the size of your thumb. Micro bats are generally pretty small. Our bats in the caves are generally about the size of this guy, except for the ghost bat. He is the world's second largest carnivorous microbat. His body's sort of like a large rat and wingspan about 60 centimetres. So for a microbat, he's a pretty big bat.
Sounds very big, especially in the bat world. And I've seen pictures and I've seen the ghost bats and the skulls of the ghost bats. And these things are ferocious. Wait until you see some of the images of these things. They're quite amazing. So getting back to the ghost bat, carnivorous creature that it is, what would it eat that lives in the caves?
Mainly in the caves, it would prey on the other bat species, the little bentwings, but generally it likes to fly out of the caves at night, like all the bats. They're nocturnal, so at night the ghost bat would fly out and look for other little creatures that we have. So things like, as I mentioned, so birds up to the size of pigeons and frogs, little rodents, that sort of thing. So, and looking at those teeth there, pretty well the T.rex of the bat species.
The T.rex, look at those teeth, that's ferocious. This is one of the scariest skulls, and I've seen a lot of skulls in my time. That is one of the scariest skulls I've ever seen.
But I actually think they're really, really cute.
As I said, she's got a thing for bats. So
I do.
She's a bit batty.
Very
come
funny.
on, that's pretty good. All right, so baby bats. Obviously, if they're caves, where do bats lay, or they don't lay eggs?
Lay eggs.
How do they have babies, and what are babies called?
Okay, so yes, bats are a mammal. They're a placental mammal. So a bat will give birth to one baby pup a year. That's what you call the babies. So our little bentwings that we have, if the mothers are about this big, they'll give birth to a tiny little pup that's about the size of a jelly bean. They give birth around summertime. The pups are pink and hairless. Their eyes are closed, just like newborn puppies. and within 7 weeks they grow fur, their eyes are opening, they're learning to fly, and they're learning to use their echolocation as they move through the caves in that cave darkness. So it's pretty amazing. And bats can't be born just anywhere in the cave. They need a special temperature. So because the pups are so tiny, they need about 37 degrees in our area. So there's a bat maternity cave, which is pretty cool. So we could get about maybe up to 300,000 females coming, and each female will have their baby, their pup. They leave it in there. It's like a bit of a nursery. You might have some of the older bats looking after them like babysitters, while mum has to fly out into the forest to get insects so she can produce her milk for her baby. And she comes back and she can find her baby in all those thousands of other bats, just with mainly with smell, but with sight too. So I think that's pretty incredible.
So basically their babies smell very individual. It's like a fingerprint. They know the scent of their baby. They can find their baby, because if you've got 50,000 baby bats all in the same area, they're all going to kind of look the same, and it's going to be chaotic. And it's dark in a cave.
Very
so,
dark.
You know, it makes sense to be able to smell your baby. So it might be a bit weird going around smelling babies, but find your baby that way. Now, something Kath mentioned was that they are a placental mammal. Now, that's important when it comes to Australia, because Australia is famous for its marsupials.
Oh, it nearly got me there for a second.
And so everybody thinks only marsupials in Australia, that we only have marsupials, that we have no other type of mammal, just marsupials. But it's actually not true. You know, we have the dingo, which was introduced here about 2,000 years ago, but we have lots of bats and lots of native rodents and things like that. So, yeah, it's important to think that this is probably one of the largest mammals, placental mammals, that have ever lived in Australia since the dinosaur age. So, ghost bats are cool.
They are amazing.
I like them a lot.
Me too.
But I can only ever eat one for breakfast. I'll stop talking about eating bats. Okay, so how long can these bats live for?
Generally, different sized bats will have different lifespans, but let's say a ghost bat, I believe they could live between 20 years maybe in the wild, or maybe up to 22 in captivity. And the little bent wings, the little tiny guys like this, maybe about 5.5 years. So a bit less longer live those little guys.
So that's not bad. For small mammals, usually live a lot shorter lifespans than the large mammals. Obviously, look at elephants and whales. Some whales can live up to 200 years, we think. So they can be very long-lived, whereas most mammals, the very small ones, they only live a very short lifetime. Now, upside down. Do all bats live upside down when they're sleeping, when they're roosting, when they're hanging around? Do bats hang upside down? And if so, does the poop come out their mouths?
Wow, that is a good question.
I ask nothing but good questions, may I just say. I'm the good question asker.
Kids love that. Kids ask that question a lot. So if we take a look at this picture of our ghost bat, and you flip him upside down, bats have evolved to hang upside down, and they have done that because they're the only mammals that can fly, as we said. So hopefully I'll have a bigger picture to show you next time. But what happens is, our bats have lovely big broad shoulders, lots of muscles. Mammals do have heavy bones, so they need this big strong upper body so they can flap those wings. Now that means that as a mammal, that's pretty heavy. They've got a lot of weight on them. So bats have had to reduce this weight somehow. So the only other part of their body they can do this is their lower parts of their body. So we're talking about the hips, pelvis region, and their legs as well. So when you look at a bat skeleton, they have these nice big broad shoulders, but they have these tiny, tiny little pelvis and hip bones, and their legs are quite small as well. So that's why a bat cannot physically perch on a branch like a bird. He has to hang upside down. And also that comes to the questions of how do bats go to the toilet. So I do get asked that question a lot on tour, because bats are hanging upside down all the time. So what are they going to do? Well, bats do not poo out their mouth. Now that doesn't sound very hygienic or tasty as well. So what bats do is they have they still have their thumbs on their hands, and they actually use their thumbs to hang the right way up. They flip themselves upright, they go to the toilet, give themselves a little shake it off, and then they flip back upside down again.
Don't know about you guys out there, but I was getting a bit nervous when she started talking about the thumb. I'm like, where's this going? But so they hang the right way up, just like a gymnast on a bar or something.
Yeah.
And then they can poop onto the floor underneath.
Yep, and then flip back up again. And that's how bats go to the toilet, people. So I'm glad we've established that now.
Now, we know the ghost bat is the carnivorous bat and one of the biggest carnivorous bats ever, and got that amazing dentition, those fantastic teeth. The T.rex of the bat world. But we'll just see if we can bring him up here. So here we have the most famous vampire ever. We have Dracula. So obviously there are lots of different bats all over the world, not just in Australia. There's bats in New Zealand, there's bats all over the world. They're not all carnivorous the way the ghost bat is. So what do other bats eat? And are there real vampires in the world? Are there real vampire bats in the world? And if they bite me, am I going to turn into a vampire?
Well, you are correct in that there are vampire bats in our world, and they're not like this guy here, I'm afraid to say, everybody. We have the vampire bats live in Central and Southern America. Now, unlike vampire here, they do drink blood, but they don't pierce the animal and then suck the blood through its fangs. They actually usually it is an animal or a horse or a pig or something like that. They use their really sharp incisors to make a little cut, usually around the hoofs or somewhere like that. And when the blood starts trickling, they use their little V-shaped tongue just to lap it up. So they don't actually pierce the skin with their fangs and suck you like Dracula.
And they're pretty small, aren't they? Most of the vampire bats are pretty small.
They're pretty small.
Big animals don't notice this tiny little cut. It's like us being bitten by a mosquito or something.
Yeah, that's right. They're very tiny.
So it doesn't do any damage, doesn't hurt the animal that much.
No, I believe...
Doesn't make them turn into a vampire.
No, it doesn't.
A vampire horse is one of the most terrifying images I can think of at the moment.
No, we don't have
Horses
to worry
running
about
around.
that. So you will not turn into a vampire, if you get bitten by a bat.
So you could turn into a bat if you get bitten by one.
That would be awesome. No. Look, bats are amazing creatures, but we do recommend that if you ever see an injured bat, that you don't pick them up, because bats will not attack you. They don't get caught in your hair and things like that. But if you do pick up an injured bat, because it is a wild animal, it could be scared, it could bite you. And so we only recommend that wildlife carers and people who are specialists in handling bats actually look after them, or touch them, I should say. So the best thing you guys could do, if you ever see an injured bat or if you're worried about wildlife, is to call some wildlife experts, and they'll soon come and help you out and help that animal out.
Now, I know a bit about paleontology. I love my fossils. I know ghost bats used to live most all over Australia. They've been found down in Victoria, they've been found in caves and fossil deposits in New South Wales. But today, where can the ghost bat be found today?
So the ghost bat today, their distribution range, thank you, is more on the top sections of Australia. So we have Queensland over here, and where the bottom of that red section is, that's our cave system, and the Mount Etna systems in central Queensland. We're at the lowest of their range, so that's awesome. We also have the top Queensland, Northern Territory, and some parts in Western Australia too. So we're so lucky that we actually have these guys here at Capricorn Caves.
Hanging upside down. There's a ghost bat hanging upside down. Now, before, when you're talking about how they hunt and things like that, you mentioned and how they find their babies and how they navigate, echolocation. So I've just found one of these pictures that made me think of it. So echolocation, what's echolocation?
Well, echolocation is a bit like it's like a sonar. So as the bat's flying, it'll actually send out a sound wave, and that sound wave will hit an object, it will bounce back and it'll get caught by the bat in these awesome nose leaves. When you look at their faces, they have these really big ears and these massive big bits of skin on their nose, and that helps capture that sound. And so in their mind, they can form a picture of their environment. So that's how they use their echolocation.
So bizarrely, that is a little bit like how your sight works. So they're using sound instead of light. So light falls from the sun, bounces off an object, goes into our eye. So we're actually seeing the light that bounces off the object, and so sound's working exactly like light. So instead of seeing with their eyes, they're seeing with their ears. That's pretty cool. Now, we've got some amazing faces here. Look how ugly some of these guys are.
They're beautiful. What are you talking about?
Look at her loving her bats. So are there any other types of bats, like the biggest bat in the world? Is that the fruit bat?
It would be a fruit bat, or some people call them flying foxes. Yes,
So they're
I
an
believe
Australian animal as well?
Indonesia, I believe, has the largest wingspan fruit bat, and I think it's something like 1.5 meters wide, or something like to that effect. So massive, big wingspans.
Now, one of the important things that we were talking about, and when it comes to bats, you said that they are the only ones that are able to fly consistently, like I can't even remember the word you said, but they're the only mammals that really fly, have powered flight. There are a lot of gliders out there, the sugar glider, they don't really fly, they kind of just plummet controlled by having a basic parachute and not hitting the ground as hard as not having a parachute. So bats, how do they fly?
How do they fly? Bats have these amazing hands, not jazz hands.
I can do this. Jazz hands. Twinkle, twinkle.
So when you have a look at this part of the bat's wing up here, that's its wrist, okay? Now, our thumb here would be the little hook. Remember I said that hook is what they used to go to the toilet? Important there. And also these 4 fingers are actually these long extended fingers which actually give the wing its structure. So they're actually using their hands to fly.
And we've got another picture here of the entire wing. So birds do pretty much the same thing. If you're ever eating a chicken, if you get a chicken wing and you're eating the chicken wing, you've got the nice meaty bit, and then the next part of the chicken wing, there's 2 bones, that kind of hemisphere bones, and then at the end you've got this really sharp pointy bit with a little knobbly thing which you don't eat because there's no meat on that. That's basically the bird's fingers that are fused together. So instead of fusing together like the bird, it sounds like the bat does that. It spreads its fingers out wide. Now, I've got this picture of the bat, the ghost bat again. So there's the hand, here's the arm bones, and you'll notice we can do a bit of an experiment. Now, if you're at home, put your arm out like this, grab the top of your arm and twist your hand like this. You feel all the muscles move and everything moving inside there, and inside you can feel 1 bone. And then if you put your hand here and kind of twist your hand a bit, you feel the muscles move, but you'll feel that there's 2 bones, especially at the wrist. You can feel there's 2 bones going down here, and then you've got the finger bones at the end. So that's exactly the same way that the bat works. You can see there's the 1 bone, the 2 bones, and the hand bones there. So their arm is built exactly the same way as ours, because we're all mammals.
That's right.
And it's good to be a mammal. What is a mammal?
What is a mammal? A mammal is a warm-blooded creature. We give birth to our live young. We're placental mammals. We give our babies milk.
And that's the big important one, milk.
We have fur.
And are there some mammals that don't have live babies? Especially in Australia?
Yes, we have. That's right. We have a very special group of mammals called monotremes. And you would all know them as the Australian platypus and the little spiky echidnas. So these guys have all the attributes of mammals, but they actually give birth to their young in these little tiny egg sacs.
And the reason why I brought that up is going back to the idea that Australia only has marsupials. Again, that's not true at all. There's 3 types of mammals alive today. There's the placental mammals, there's the marsupials, and there's the monotremes. And Australia has all 3, even though most of the big placental mammals today have been brought by colonists when they brought in horses and cows and sheep and stuff like that. But no, we had bats, we have lots of marsupials, and Australia is one of the only places that has monotremes, but it's not the only place. There's somewhere else that has monotremes. Do you know where else you can find monotremes in the world, Katherine?
Papua New Guinea?
Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea has the biggest monotreme in the world, and if you want to look something up, look this up. It is the giant echidna. This echidna is almost the size of a sheep. It is gigantic. It is one of the rarest creatures on the planet. They only live basically on one mountain. They're almost extinct, unfortunately, but they do still exist. You can find photos of them online, and they're just the most amazing thing.
Wow.
So yeah, you know, but
That's awesome.
during the if we're talking geographically or geography, Papua New Guinea is actually part of Australia. When we look at the rocks, it is part of Australia. Just when there's the ice age, the ice traps all the water, ocean levels fall, and you can actually walk from Queensland to Papua New Guinea. And that's why Queensland has a giant bird called
Cassowary!
and Papua New Guinea has a giant bird called
Cassowary!
Yeah, so there's lots of species shared between Queensland and Papua New Guinea because they're actually pretty much the same part of land. So I think we've done just about everything we can do about bats. Trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, maybe the one thing we missed was the ghost bat, because we like talking science here. Scientifically, what is the ghost bat called?
Macroderma geiger.
And can you spell it?
Oh, I can.
Yeah, with a capital M. And what does Macroderma geiger mean?
Big-skinned giant.
Yeah, so what happens here is in science, if you're naming something, you don't want to use English because not everybody speaks English. If you're German, you may not understand the English word, or if you're Japanese, you may not understand the German word. But there are a couple of languages that are totally dead that we have catalogues of, and that's ancient Greek and ancient Latin, and nobody speaks those anymore. And they've got very descriptive words like macro,
Big!
yeah, and micro.
Small.
So all these words are very descriptive, and we can put them together, create a scientific name. And if you're a German person, you can learn ancient Latin just like everybody else has to learn ancient Latin, and you can decipher what that name means just by the actual words used. And it gives you an idea of what the animal looked like as well, because Macroderma geiger is
Big-skinned giant. I would be really scared if I was thinking of trying to imagine a big-skinned giant, though.
But if you're talking bats, that's a pretty good. It's
not
a
too
big
bad.
bat.
It's a big
got
bat.
lots of skin for its arms and wings and everything. So pretty good name. Well, I think we're about done for today. I can't think of anything else we need to learn about bats.
But if you guys have any questions, please jump on our Facebook and send us some questions, and we'll do our best to answer them all.
And over the next couple of episodes, it's not just going to be about bats. It's not just going to be about Capricorn Caves. We're going to talk about geology. We're going to talk about natural history, some of the animals from Australia and around the place. It's going to be fascinating
It's going to be awesome, guys. So please like our page, like our Facebook, join in, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.